Let's get right into it then. So we're going to start off with the draft day hidden gems, and like I said, this could be anyone that was drafted outside of the first round. We tried to pick some really good ones, especially some later rounds, just to show you guys that anybody could be drafted later and still turn into a superstar. So at number one on our list, wide receiver TJ Houshmandzadeh, drafted by the Cincinnati Bengals, round 7 in 2001 from Oregon State. And looking at some statistics here, I mean, he started off a little bit slow in his first 3 seasons, but by his fourth season, he averaged 126 fantasy points, then 149, 162, 187, 115, 109, and then he slowed down at the end of his career. And we're talking, I mean, almost 1,000 yards each season, and one of them he had 1,112 TDs. He went off afterwards. Nick, you're going to talk to us about Mr. Houshmandzadeh?
Yeah, TJ, who's your mama? As the commercial says, or as his fellow teammate Chad Johnson said. So, but yeah, TJ, he had some solid years there, as you said, from 2004 to 2009, where he was basically averaging way over 100 points a season. He's had seasons where he's ranked as high as the wide receiver 7 in all of fantasy. So, I mean, that's some big help to a lot of fantasy teams, and I'm pretty sure, it did definitely help a lot of fantasy teams. And he was drafted so late in the draft that, it was said that he was probably going to be one of the, nothing really there as a wide receiver. In his first few years, actually, he dropped so many balls that he led the league in dropped receptions, and people were saying that he could be one of the worst wide receiver draft picks that has been made. But in 2004, he ended up having a big boom, where he took over as the second wide receiver on the team next to Chad Johnson, and he just started excelling after that, and it kind of never ended after that. It almost went down to the point where people were saying that this duo between Chad Johnson and TJ was actually one of the best 1-2 punches in the league. So, another interesting fact is that in 2007, like I was saying, where the TJ Who's Your Mama aspect of it, there was a commercial where there's a bunch of guys drafting their fantasy draft for the year, and one guy's up to pick, and he's picking TJ Who's Your Mama. He didn't know the name. He couldn't get it. And so eventually they all made fun of him, and then it actually was that year where he exploded for his best career year, putting up 1,200 yards, 12 TDs, and 112 receptions, where he actually led the NFL, tied with, I believe it was Julian Edelman.
Nice, yeah. So it shows you a 7th rounder turning into a superstar. And for the record, the guys all thought that I would screw up that name there, and it wasn't me this time. It was Nick, so I'll take that one.
That was part of the commercial.
You were practicing.
Hey, I grew up with TJ. He was one of my fantasy guys. I know him. We're good.
Okay.
I didn't screw up the name. That was part of the commercial.
Right. Okay.
You almost called him TJ Credenza.
If you go watch the commercial, you'll see that they screwed up the name every single time.
And so did you. Perfect.
Okay.
All right,
sure.
let's move on to number 2. And this one is a running back who was drafted by the San Diego Chargers. He was drafted in 2004, round 5. This would be Michael the Burner Turner, drafted out of Northern Illinois. Also started off kind of slow in his first 4 years with San Diego, and then all of a sudden gets traded to Atlanta, becomes the number 1, and just skyrocketed. His numbers were insane: 276 fantasy points, 150, 217, 216, another 150, and then he went away. So, but he did have some good numbers there. So, Sam, why don't you tell us about Michael the Burner Turner?
Yeah, Mr. Michael the Burner Turner. 2008 was a great year. Low from Flow Rider was the number 1 song. The Dark Knight was the number 1 movie in the box office. American Idol was the number 1 show on TV. And Michael the Burner Turner was the number 1 RB in the NFL. As you mentioned, he really blossomed that year, was just his breakout year. Now, it's a little unfair to him because the first 4 years in San Diego, he was sitting behind a guy that you guys might know, LaDainian Tomlinson. Like, so he's just somebody that might be okay as a running back. So he really didn't get a lot of time on the field, but when he did, he shone, right? Like, so that was really one of the things that really helped break him out, right? Because that one game behind LaDainian, he basically shone as a standout running back. He did a really, really good job. He got one touchdown. I think he did like 90 yards in a half a game or in a game. And it really shone the light on him to say, hey, this guy could be something. And, you know, that year in 2008, he finished with 1,699 yards, an average of 4.5 yards per carry, and 17 rushing touchdowns. He averaged 17.3 fantasy points per game. So in 2008, it was a great year for him. And if you had him on your team, you had a great year in 2008 as well. You know, he was a two-sport athlete in high school, really fast. He ran an 11:15 100-meter dash, which is amazing. And, you know, there's a few stats on him that are, you know, really, really interesting. When he started with the Falcons, he actually debuted and broke the Falcons single game rushing record against your Detroit Lions, Frank, on September 7th, 2008, for rushing for 220 yards, 22 carries, and 2 TDs. So that actually marked the third highest opening day rushing, behind a couple of guys you guys might know, Mr. O.J. Simpson at 250 yards in 1973, and Arian Foster at 231 yards in 2010. So he basically broke that record and also passed the third highest, which was 202 by Gerald Ruggs, who is actually an Atlanta Falcon as well in 1984. So he still, you know, holds a lot of those records. His 17 rushing TDs in 2008 as well broke another Atlanta Falcon record for 14 rushing TDs set by Mr. Jamal Dirty Bird Anderson in 1998. And still to this day, he holds those records. So most career touchdowns for a Falcon at 60. And he also has the rushing TDs, like I mentioned, at 17 in 2008. And just so you guys know, another interesting fact is when he rushed for 1,699 yards, he only had 41 catching yards, only 6 targets and 41 catching yards. So he really wasn't a catching back, but he did it on the ground and he did it well. So you never know where these superstars are going to come from. And like you said, he had a really good stretch leading into 2012, was released by the Falcons, and he just sailed off into the sunset. And, you know, he closed a great career with the Falcons, one of the legends for Atlanta, and did a really good job on fantasy as well.
Yeah, I mean, he had a great career. It just goes to show you sometimes, you know, someone's change of scenery could make all the difference. So if you see anyone getting traded or moving to a new team, don't count them out. There could be something there.
Darnold.
That's later. Let's move on to number 3 on our list. This person was drafted to the Denver Broncos in the 7th round in the 1990 NFL draft. Yes, we're going back a little bit. Woo! He is a Hall of Famer, was inducted in 2011. We are talking about tight end Shannon Sharpe. And he had a heck of a long career. He was stellar. But I'll let Chris talk about it. Chris, go ahead.
Probably one of the better sound bites the NFL has ever had. Shannon Sharpe was drafted in the 7th round as the 192nd pick. He ended up being a 3-time Super Bowl champion, a 4-time first-team All-Pro, 8 Pro Bowls. He was inducted, like James said, into the Hall of Fame in 2011. Sharpe ended his stellar career with 815 receptions, 10,060 yards, and 62 touchdowns. He finished his career averaging 12.3 yards per reception. That's 13 years of playing football, and that was his average per reception. He was averaging a first down per reception every time he caught the ball, which is, I don't know about you guys, but for the tight end position, that long, to go that long and still average that many yards per catch.
Imagine if it was tight end premium.
Yeah, exactly. He's the tight end to own. But that just goes to show you, like Shannon Sharpe, along with the rest of the group that we talk about here, it's a small sample size of guys that we're talking about. That just goes to show you that GMs and front office guys, scouts, and all that stuff, they can get it wrong, and when they do, examples like TJ Houshmandzadeh and Michael Turner and Shannon Sharpe here just go to show that if you do your homework in fantasy, some of these guys is luck, and if you ended up with Shannon Sharpe on your roster, you kind of got lucky and it worked out for you. So Hall of Famer Shannon Sharpe, Denver Bronco, the Donkey.
Orange Crush, baby. Orange Crush.
Did he finish in Denver or did he finish in Baltimore? Because I know he had a stint in Baltimore.
I want to say he actually had 2 years in Baltimore in between. I think he finished.
And he came
as a
back.
Bronco.
Yeah,
That's
right.
correct. He did. Yeah, he came back at age 34 and 35 to finish in Denver in 2003 and 2002-2003. So, he's a Hall of Famer. There's nothing else that could be said there. So, let's move on to our next one, number 4. Another Hall of Famer, another Denver Bronco, drafted in the 6th round. Wow, these guys know how to draft late.
I like it.
This is he was drafted. It was 1995 as well, so they're late. The new Denver Broncos, they don't know how to draft, but the old ones they do. This is running back Terrell Davis, and Frank, I'm gonna let you handle this one. Go ahead.
Yeah, Terrell Davis, 1995, and the 196th overall draft pick. While his career was short-lived due to knee injuries, he made some serious noise in his short time in the NFL. He was named the NFL Associated Press Offensive Player of the Year 2 consecutive years in 97 and 98. He was the NFL MVP outright in 1998, and he was voted to the All-Decade Team of the 90s. And you know all the great running backs in the 90s. He's one of the best. During his career, he rushed for 60 touchdowns, maintained the career average of 4.6 yards per rush, and he ran for a career total of 7,607 yards. His best season came in 1998 when he became the 4th running back ever to have a 2,000-yard season. He also scored an impressive 23 touchdowns that year and finished with 361 fantasy points. He rushed for 56 touchdowns in his first 4 seasons, something that nobody else has done. He's a real head-scratcher as to why the Hall of Famer, he ended up in the 6th round. He was the 18th running back drafted that year. We all know hindsight's 20/20, but let's look at some of the other running backs that were selected before Terrell Davis in 1995. The Cincinnati Bengals traded up from number 5 to number 1 to draft Kijana Carter. Have you guys heard of him?
Who's that?
Kijana Carter out of Penn State. Tyrone Wheatley,
Wow.
Napoleon Kaufman, Rashad Salam, other first-round running backs that year. 2 different James Stewarts. One was supposed to be the successor to Barry, but didn't work out. The only other real notable running back in that class was Curtis, my favorite, Martin, who himself was a 3rd-round pick, and he ended up being the NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year en route to a Hall of Fame career of his own. So think twice before you trade away your late-round dynasty picks, because there's always some diamonds in the rough.
Wow, well said. That I mean, I don't know any of those first-round running backs.
I'm reading these guys, I'm like, who? Okay.
That's crazy. And it's 18, so 17 other running backs went before him, and maybe one of them was another Hall of Famer. That's insane.
Unbelievable.
Oh.
And back-to-back Broncos. I like it, guys. Keep it up. I like this. This is great.
Well, I'm going to upset you with our next one. So we're going back to Frank. He's going to talk about this one. This player needs no introduction. He is the GOAT, Tom Brady, drafted in round 6 in 2000 by the Patriots out of Michigan. Frank, I mean, we've talked about him a lot in the last few podcasts after the Super Bowl. So what else can you say about Mr. Brady?
I had to do a little research. I wasn't too familiar with this kid, but I mean, what can you say about Tom Brady? Everybody knows he was drafted in the 6th round, and he's the greatest of all time. So, like, what more is there to say? So I'm gonna just kind of give my opinion, and then just kind of explain why I think he fell so far. Despite all the analysis that goes on in scouting, the NFL draft is not a science; it's a gamble. And because of that, some teams tend to draft conservatively by banking on their top picks on the safe bets and their low picks on the risky bets. So there's a lot of reasons why he wasn't viewed as a high pick in 2000. In 1999, the year before, quarterbacks were a hot commodity. Tim Couch, Donovan McNabb, Achilles Smith were first, second, third overall. And then the 11th and 12th picks were Dante Culpepper and Cade McNown. Both of them were starters for the beginning of their careers at least. So that's 5 quarterbacks chosen in the first round alone. 8 more were chosen in the 1999 draft. Compare that to Brady's year, where he was at the end of the compare that to Brady's year, where by the end of the 5th round, only 5 quarterbacks were gone. So there were as many quarterbacks chosen in the first round in 1999 as there were in the first 5 rounds of the 2000 draft. Bottom line, there was no demand for quarterbacks that year, so the majority of them were low. The Patriots weren't really in the market for a quarterback that year. They had Drew Bledsoe and a couple of the younger guys that they drafted just a year earlier. So there's no real reason why they needed to pick a quarterback. He had good stats in college, but he didn't have many accolades. He wasn't an All-American. He didn't win the Heisman. He wasn't an All-Conference first or second team. He was an All Big Ten Conference honorable mention. That's it. During his senior year, Drew Brees was widely recognized as the top quarterback in the Big Ten, and Antoine Randall, who in the NFL played as a wide receiver, gained attention for being the most athletic quarterback in the conference. Brady was just overlooked. Consequently, there wasn't much hype around him. Scouts were really hard on him, as they are on most quarterbacks. They've criticized his slow foot speed, his frame, saying he was too small. They criticized his arm strength, saying that he couldn't throw a tight spiral. They said he couldn't improvise if a play broke down. Some even said that his good stats were a product of him being on a great team rather than him being a great player. Looking back, these criticisms are laughable. But at the time, there were legitimate concerns that made him a value plummet. A lot of scouts had said that he has flaws. Given his intangibles, he could be a great player for the right team and the right system. Fast forward a little bit, New England drafted him, and he flourished in their system. Would he have thrived better if he was drafted somewhere else? That's anybody's guess. So every year there's players like Brady who fall through the cracks and slide down the draft board, becoming late selections. Some fall off the board entirely and go undrafted. One team's loss is another's gain. Again, the NFL draft is not a science, it's a gamble.
Well said. That was good. I like that. It's crazy when you think about it. There's 32 teams there, and they can't all have a good quarterback still. We can't find that many guys that can throw the ball and be a good quarterback. And look at teams like the Chicago Bears. I mean, they've gone years without being able to find one good quarterback. It's
Denver
just
Broncos.
Well, the Broncos have had good quarterbacks, but it's crazy how some of these teams still can't find a good quarterback, and yet you'd think you only need 30 of them, and most of the teams already have one. So why can't we find 7 to finish off that, and everyone should have one good QB, and you can't do it. And this guy was third string, just sitting there behind these other 2 guys, and it took 2 injuries for him to get in the game, and he just never looked back. And now he shot all of those bad traits that everyone said about him completely out of the water. And
So one interesting thing that Frank mentioned, I think you mentioned that was it the year before where all those quarterbacks were drafted first round, like the year prior, like 99? Is that what you said?
Yes.
Okay, well, 2021 is going to be a freaking disaster because it seems like quarterback. So none of these guys are going to pan out based on history. We'll see, though. This draft is quarterback rich as well. So we'll see if it holds true.
Interesting to see if the trend like that continues. Yep.
Yeah.
Let's move on to number 6 here. Wide receiver Marques Colston, drafted for the New Orleans Saints, 2006, round 7 out of Hofstra College. Chris, go ahead.
Yeah, drafted in the 7th round, picked 252 out of Hofstra University, like James said. Colston ended his career as the Saints' all-time franchise leader in receiving yards, yards from scrimmage, receiving touchdowns, and total receptions. His rookie year in half PPR format, he averaged 13.3 points per game, and the following 7 years, he was as steady as they come, averaging about 13.7 points per game. He's another victim of a player overlooked by attending a small school who ended up having a stellar NFL career. One of my all-time favorite Saints. His connection with Drew Brees, when Drew Brees went there, it was lights out. He was his number 1 target. He could stretch the field. He can get downfield. He can cut across the middle. He was a threat in the end zone. So when we talk about late round finds like Marques Colston, probably a guy that if in rookie drafts you're getting late, like Frank said, don't sell those late dynasty picks, because you could end up with a guy like Marques Colston or a guy like Antonio Gibson or a lot of the guys that we're talking about here, and they can really just pan out and end up being players that take you to championships.
Yeah, I remember him. He was fun to watch when he was playing for the Saints.
Yep.
You didn't expect that out of him, obviously, when he was drafted that low, but I mean, he was fun. And then they turned him into a gem of a player for sure.
Stud.
So let's move on to another seventh rounder. 2009, round 7, drafted by the New England Patriots out of Kent State, Julian Edelman. Sam, go ahead.
Yeah, Julian Edelman is one of those guys, again, just like a previous wide receiver, was picked really, really low. He was 232nd overall in the draft. And, you know, Julian Edelman is not one of these flashy kind of RB1 guys that's going to have those highlight reel type of plays. He's that workman. He's that guy that's going to grind
Sam, hold on. Sorry, that's because he's not an RB. He's a wide receiver.
Oh, I'm sorry. WR1. You're right. Sorry. Right. But if he was an RB, he'd be that same type of RB, I think. But anyway, no. But you know what I mean? Like, he's not that, that flashy, WR1 that makes a lot of noise. He just shows up and goes to work. Like, that's basically what he's done his whole career. He started off really slow, though. I mean, the first 4 years were really nothing to kind of speak of. He really didn't get a lot of playing time. He didn't play every game. But his breakout year came in 2013, where he had over 1,000 yards receiving and 142.7 fantasy points, averaging about almost 9 points per game. And then ever since then, other than just last season when he had to deal with the injuries and only played 6 games, he's been that workman. He's been that guy that's going to be out there every down. He's going to be out there, making sure he's in the right position to catch the ball, and he's going to get you those points. He's averaging around the 10 to 12 points per game. He's not, like I said, the WR1 on any fantasy team, but he's not. He is that guy that's a solid flex upside on the wide receiver 2 position, and he's gonna give you that consistent performance. So, if you have a guy like him on your squad, you are in a good position. Even though he could be a steal late in the round, he can be that guy that's going to make the difference in those tight games where you need somebody that's going to be solid with their hands and grab that ball for you. So.
And if I'm correct, Edelman is still going to be available this draft coming up, and you still could probably get him.
He's still active. Yep, absolutely.
So he'll be back from injury probably with Cam, and who knows, maybe he'll help out because they could use anybody that can catch a ball over there.
Absolutely.
Let's go on to our next one. I really like this player. I'm glad he was brought up. And this is a running back. He was drafted in the 5th round by the Green Bay Packers in 2017 out of Texas, El Paso, Mr. Aaron Jones. Nick, go ahead.
I mean, we've been talking about Aaron Jones quite a bit these last few weeks, as we all know. May it be trading him in fantasy leagues, may it be all that. But yeah, there's not much else to say that he was a late draft pick. He was the 19th drafted running back in that year. Some names ahead of him that, I'll let you decide, but Leonard Fournette, Donta Foreman, Kareem Hunt, Samaje Perine, Tariq Cohen, his partner Jamal Williams, who's no longer there, Brian Hill were all drafted ahead of him. But, if it's my opinion, I'm thinking Aaron Jones is way better than all of these guys I just named. So it's crazy to see how far an elite running back, especially in types of drafts where with running back, the running back position, it's so volatile that I think a lot of them can fall late, but it's crazy to see how far he dropped and how good of a running back he's been. In the 2017 year, in his rookie year, he ended up playing mostly because Ty Montgomery and Jamal Williams ended up getting hurt, and he ended up finishing the year with 448 yards, which was tied for 9th in the rookie conversation of rookie RBs that year. And then basically he started to explode as the main guy in 2019, where he had some huge games, which just continued to bring up his stock and his value in fantasy. That owners wanted him on their team. One being the biggest game that probably started talking is the one against the Cowboys, unfortunately, where he put up 159 yards and 4 touchdowns. I feel bad for my Cowboys, but hey. Other than that, he ended up turning into not only a running back, but he's also a catch passing back. So it's two different styles of his game now into the same aspect, and basically it's just excelling him to be what we see in a top running back in the league. In 2019, he ended up finishing as the 5th overall running back, and he finished as the 2nd overall running back, second to only Christian McCaffrey, who we all know had a huge year that year. And then last year he ended up finishing as the 5th best running back, and he also missed 2 games. He only played 14 games because he was hurt. So as long as he can maintain being healthy, as long as he can stay out of trouble, because he did have some trouble in the NFL, I don't see him stopping this consistent trend of putting up over, hundreds of points in fantasy and being that more reliable running back, especially with him being in Green Bay.
So
I agree with everything you just said.
He peaked in 2019, and it's all downhill from here. Is that what you're saying? Like, that's what I heard.
No, I said he peaked, and he's going to continue to
2019, and he's going down.
Okay. So wait, if you consider a downgrade going from 2nd to 5th, I understand. Yes, he went down 3 spots.
Okay,
that's right, he did. But he's still in the
10,
top 10.
Then it's 15. Never mind. Go ahead.
That's what you're
solid
hoping
back.
for. It's
solid
okay.
back.
Listen,
I'm joking.
When you have to wear the Cowboys jersey, we'll talk about it then, okay? Don't worry about it.
I don't know about that. We'll see.
All right, on to our next one. And this guy was, how do I put this? What's the best way to say it? Nuts, crazy, loose cannon.
What do you mean was?
I think he still is all of that. What do you mean?
Go,
Yeah,
exactly.
he still is all of that. And he also was a fantastic wide receiver and probably one of the best that we've ever seen. He was drafted in round 6 in 2010 by the Pittsburgh Steelers, Mr. Antonio Brown. Chris, go ahead, buddy.
Crazy and insane and whatever other words you use to describe him, I think are a little too much. AB likes to be known as misunderstood. So if AB's listening, I got you, AB. All right. One of his quotes when he got drafted was 8 times 4 is 32, and 32 teams look past me, even the Steelers. That is an AB quote as to why he picked number 84 and why he played every game with a chip on his shoulder. Picked by the Pittsburgh Steelers in 2010 in the 6th round as the 195th pick. In his first 3 years, his highest finish in fantasy was wide receiver 20 in half PPR. After that, he exploded with a stretch of 5 years where he finished as the wide receiver 1 3 years in a row, bookended by 2 wide receiver 2 finishes. AB is the classic reason, as many of these guys we're talking about here, a lot of the time scouts and management miss great talent. He was missed mainly because he went to a smaller school. I think if he went to a bigger program, there's no doubt that his draft stock would have been higher. One of the old adages that hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard is attached to a lot of these guys in these lists right here. And AB's one of those. If he stays in Tampa, like many are expecting him to stay in there, I'm expecting a decent fantasy season from him. A mid wide receiver 2 is where I got him just based on ball share in Tampa Bay. I'm drafting him. If I can get him, I'm drafting him. If I can trade for him, I'm trading for him. He's still a hard worker. He still has a good step. He still has his routes. And Tom Brady likes the underneath guy. So a full offseason with Brady, a full preseason and all that. I'm excited to see what AB has in store for this season.
Yeah, I've also heard some rumblings that Seattle, Mr. Russell Wilson wants him over there. So I'm sure.
Yeah, because
there could
they
be-
worked out before he signed with Tampa. They were working out in the summer and stuff like that. So I know they got a good connection. I mean, other than maybe his locker room presence, out of Tampa Bay, they said he wasn't an issue in the locker room. If I'm a team that's wide receiver needy, a win now team or something like that, like I'd be going after him. He's still got it, and it shows.
Yeah, no, I think so too. I assume he's gonna probably go back to Brady. I'd go back to Brady. That's where I'd go.
Yep.
So,
Is he a Hall of Famer?
I mean,
I
his
think so.
numbers show that he is. I think he should be. His head
Yeah,
and
I
his
think so.
outside issues say he isn't. So,
But they don't base it on that, though. They don't base it on that. Look how many guys with this. Ray Lewis is in the Hall of Fame. And
Yeah,
he
but-
killed a guy, allegedly.
allegedly, he was never
true.
convicted. Allegedly,
But
and
still,
then he became he was like a reverend, and then he was this and that, and he's done a whole bunch of other things. And
Rangers.
So
whatnot.
all
So-
AB has to
Rangers
do
spray.
is get born again and become a
yeah,
reverend.
if
he's
that
dead.
happens, then maybe he
Reverend,
gets
Reverend
in. but-
Brown. There you go.
Either way, I mean, Terrell Owens is in the Hall of Fame. There's been other diva wide receivers that are in the Hall of Fame. I think AB is a lock, first ballot.
That's true. You can't be a wide receiver without having some issues, unless you're
You
Jerry
gotta
Rice.
have a
He's,
chip on
he's
your
the
shoulder.
only
It's-
one that had no issues. He
T.Y.
just knew he
Hilton.
was the
It's a-
best.
It's a flashy position, man.
That is. You're right. It's
So,
true.
Speaking of wide receivers, let's go to our next one. This is also another little older one. He's a Green Bay Packer great, drafted in the 7th round as well in 1999 out of Alcorn State, Mr. Donald Driver. Frank, go ahead. I haven't heard that name in a while.
Watch your mouth, James. I don't like Green Bay and great being used in the same sentence, all right? Well, Donald Driver was drafted by the Green Bay Packers in 1999 at the 213th pick in the 7th round. Driver is the Packers' all-time leader in receptions with 743 and with yards with 10,137. He also ranks 5th on the Packers list with 61 receiving touchdowns and accumulated 1,401 fantasy points throughout his time in the NFL. He had a slow start to his career, but in 2002 he came into his own with his first 1,000-yard season, a trend which continued until 2009. During that stretch, he recorded 8,530 of his 10,137 yards and 46 of his 61 TDs. He was selected to the Pro Bowl in 2002, 2006, and 2007. And in 2002, he was named the Packers MVP. He was the 25th wideout taken in the 1999 draft. In a fairly decent draft class featuring Torrey Holt, David Boston, Peerless Price, Marty Booker, and Brandon Stokely, among a litany of underwhelming names. He was leaps and bounds the second best receiver of this class, second only to Torrey Holt. So don't be dead set on using an early fantasy draft pick on a wide receiver, especially in a year like this where the position is so deep. The value is there, and just like in a lot of these cases we're talking about, sometimes patience pays off. Of course, there's a lot of luck involved with hitting on these late round picks, but that's where you can make some of your serious strides in your fantasy league, especially if you're a bottom team in a dynasty league.
Yeah, well said, man. There's especially this year. This is gonna be a good wide receiver class, and I mean we've had. I remember when we were going through our numbers, there were so many extra guys we wanted to put on those lists just because we thought they were so good. Chris had about 15 of them that he was ready to throw on there that I didn't even hear of. So we'll have to see what happens and go from there. But I'm sure in a few years from now we'll see some of these guys that weren't on our list become this and superstars.
Hall of Famers.
Seems to be the wide receiver position is a very popular one because our next person, also a wide receiver, a big name wide receiver that a lot of you should know. He was drafted in round 4 in 2006 by Sam's Denver Broncos out of the University of Central Florida, Brandon Marshall. Sam, go ahead.
So, yeah, listen, man, I had to choose a Denver Bronco. I know, Frank and Chris already chose one. So I looked at the Broncos and I thought, Brandon Marshall, he was a late draft pick, but not as late as some of these other guys. He went 4th round, 119th overall in 2006. First season, really minimal production. He was, 309 yards. He was used very sparingly. He had 2 TDs, but it wasn't anything to talk about. But then he just exploded. 2007, 1,325 yards. And basically from there, he really never looked back until 2015 when he finished with 1,502 yards playing for the New York Jets. So if you needed somebody in the mid to late 2000s, and 2010s, and you wanted somebody to be a consistent performer on your team, Brandon Marshall was the man. He was the guy, averaging, around 11 to 12 points per game. His highest season, again, came in 2015, which was late into his career. This is his 9th year in the league as a wide receiver, and he basically averaged almost 14.6 points per game. So not only did he have a lot, great seasons, he had multiple great seasons going on. And, as far as his production goes, where he actually had his most productive years was 6 years after being drafted, when he went to Chicago after leaving Miami, which was no slouch there either, with 1,000 yards and 1,200 yards for Miami. But he basically did 1,508 yards one season, another 1,295 yards another season in 2013 for Chicago, and then he only played 13 games, but he still averaged another 721 yards with 8 TDs. So even when he wasn't fully ready and fully able to play, he still performed. He was one of those guys that just week in, week out made it happen on the field. And, as far as length of career goes, he had it. Like, again, he was still playing in 2018. So he had a long career, and 8 of his playing careers, 8 out of the 12 were over 1,000 yards and multiple TDs and scoring, double-digit points on average each week for fantasy. So he was a production machine throughout his career.
Yeah, he was fun. I remember watching him live. I got to go watch a Cowboy game when he was on Miami, and oh my gosh, the stuff this guy was doing, the warm-ups, I remember specifically, he would stand probably about 50, 60 yards away from the quarterback, not facing the quarterback. Quarterback would throw the ball, and he would wait to see the ball behind, like coming over him, and run to go get it and catch them. Like, it was insane just watching what he did. And he would go around the whole field just catching. It's crazy. I'll never forget just his warm up alone and how good he was. And then I think he dropped 160 on the Cowboys that game. It was just crazy. You couldn't stop him. But Cowboys still won the game, so it's okay. But if you're looking to see him now, he's got I don't know if it's a podcast or a web show or whatever it is, called The Athlete, I believe it is. And him and Ocho Cinco's there, and you should just watch these guys yell at each other and talk about who's the better wide receiver. It is hilarious.
It's a great show.
That's too funny.
So, but yeah, let's get to our last one. This is also a wide receiver. Again, this guy was drafted in 2016, so a little bit closer to us here in round 5 by the Kansas City Chiefs out of West Alabama. Tyreek Hill, the cheetah. Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, so like you're saying, our wide receiver trend continues, just showing you how late wide receivers can go. But I don't know really if Tyreek Hill went real late because he wasn't good enough, because he was at West Alabama, which is a smaller school, but more so because of the domestic violence that was around at that time that he had problems with. So that's really why he was projected to actually be undrafted at all. And Kansas City actually had to go and talk to the owner and say, can we draft this guy? This is the guy we want. And they had to talk it out and figure out. They actually went and talked to the police and the statements and all that to see, how real this effect is. But they ended up drafting Tyreek Hill. And I mean, I don't think that they're going back on the decision anymore right now after what Tyreek Hill has become for them, and after Tyreek Hill is probably one of the best wide receivers in the NFL right now. So, I mean, that's just where they're at. Some other first-round wide receivers that went in that year are the names like Corey Coleman, Will Fuller, Josh Doxton, and Laquan Treadwell, which, I mean, as we're looking, they're not bad, but Tyreek Hill and what he can do on the field, although being with the high-powered offensive Chiefs, is just a whole nother type of player. In his rookie season, he was pretty much 4th on the roster, and he was more so only a punt returner or a kick returner. But he was named to the All-Star team in that year, and he actually was therefore being the all-pro punt returner. He became the first player since Gale Sayers in 1965 to have a kick return, a rushing, and a receiving touchdown all in one game. So, I mean, the speed alone, the versatility he has, it's flourished, and it's become even better now. In 2017, he basically emerged as a more dominant and consistent wide receiver with the Chiefs. And as the years keep going, he just keeps getting even more consistent, even more big plays. The speed, the cuts, the routes, the agility, everything that he has, it's just the skill level that he has. It's different, and it's not normal like what we see in wide receivers. And it's just he breaks away, and he's one catch away from making a huge play, burning the defensive backs, and racking up the points in fantasy. And now, even with more so that he has Patrick Mahomes as his quarterback, who we all know is a pretty good quarterback, there's no stopping it. And if you look at some of the games he had this year where he's going over 150, over almost 200 yards, it's what they're doing is almost like a cheat code. And I don't see Tyreek Hill stopping anytime soon.
Yeah, no, he's definitely another one of the hidden gems. So basically, guys, we just wanted to show you, here are 12 names that we found. There's a lot more out there of guys that were obviously drafted not in the first round, not in the second round, not even in the third. I don't think we had a third rounder there. So it was 4th to 7th that we went through here. And we found 12 guys that were just, 2 Hall of Famers, some guys that are going to be in the Hall of Fame. It's insane. So do some of your homework. Take those late rounders, the Dynasty, the Devy guys. These are the ones that, you need to wait a little bit on. You can. And then for the guys that are drafting, redraft and or keeper leagues, just keep tabs on some of these guys because they'll be around. Maybe not this year, maybe not next year. It might take a few years, but remember the names because they'll be back and they could be the guy that helps you win a championship in, say, the 3rd year that they start.